All right, so the big difference between Agile and Waterfall, what is it? Do you want to create a project and wait till the very, very end and realize your code was all messed up and you can't deliver that application, which happens a lot of times? Or did you maybe not set up the foundation correctly and now we have a screwed up house? So with Agile, what we're ultimately doing is simply breaking that into chunks. If I'm building an application, there's a lot involved. The UI, the code itself, user case, like testing and everything else. So with Agile, all I'm doing now is breaking that project into chunks to make sure we're delivering in different iterations so the customer is actually seeing that I'm giving them something. They're not waiting 3 months down the line, and then if I messed up or my code just screwed up on me, my entire project falls short, and now I have to rework this. So with Agile, the goal is to work in little chunks, giving the customer something, and here you can really fix all those mistakes. So the needy clients who just will call you, say, I prefer the color this way, or I prefer this way. When you're doing small chunks, you can actually make those changes without affecting the entire project itself. So that's really the main purpose of using Agile. You're able to break out the work that you're doing. You're not putting the entire project at risk of something going wrong, and you can actually pick up on those mistakes or errors in that process. So here we have start iteration. So you discover, plan, build, review. If everything's good, we move to the next phase. And this way, you'll notice that things change. We always have something else, a new comment, a new request from customers. So this is the best way for you if you're working in something like, especially software development, this is a good way to start working, get something started, see if it works, see if there's any changes or anything that we want to add. Because on paper, it always sounds great, right? Hey, I may build this app, it's going to work perfectly. But then when you do the first test, and you're like, maybe not so much. So instead of going for 6 months, we built everything. We did the UI, we did the research, and now we realized that maybe our users are just not fond of the UI that we actually used, where we could actually test it first and then move on to the next stage. So let's go ahead and pull up Zoho Sprints. So here we have our Sprints dashboard. And when you first start in, this is where you're going to see all the different projects that you're working on. And I don't have that many, right? So we're going to pick this one. So first, it's very kind of similar in a lot of ways with projects, right? You come in, you see your dashboard, and you can really see what's happening. What are people doing? How are we on our backlog? What is actually getting done? The good thing with the Agile is that you have the key decision makers involved in the process. I don't hire somebody and say, hey, can you build me a house? And I'm never looking at the progression of the house, and I have no say-so in what's happening, and then when they deliver the house, and I'm pissed off because it's not what I wanted. With Agile, you have people involved in the process itself, the decision makers especially. Because if you're going to make a decision that's going to affect the entire project, you want them to be involved. So here is just giving you an overview of everything involved in that project. You'll notice that we love feeds, so we also have a feed here as well in Zoho Sprints. And again, I'm just seeing everything happening within my team. And then here we have the brain of your project. When you're building any type of project, we need a plan. What are we doing? What are we building this for? What is required? Research, building, coding, and all that. So with the backlogs, you're really just having a big wall of to-dos, things that need to be completed, and you have every single one of them in your backlog. Once you've built all your backlog, which pretty much is the whole brain of your project, now you're going to create a sprint backlog and assign them. So all we're doing is we're taking this entire project, right? And we're taking chunks of it, creating a sprint, and assigning it to specific users so now they can work on just that. Usually, it take 1 to 8 weeks. So depending on your project, if it's a month project, maybe each week you can have some chunks here taken out. So let's create a quick sprint. And I'll call this one my test. And he was asking me who are the owners, so that's me. And I can add other people or select another person, but we'll keep it to myself. And we'll say, nope, I don't want to import anybody. And now I can add those users. So I'm creating a sprint. I'm taking all the tasks that will make my project, and I'm assigning them to that sprint. So now, hey, guys, we have 2 weeks to work on the UI. And once that 2 week is up, there's no excuses. Whatever you put together, now we can review it and see if it works. So let's add a couple people that are going to be doing work. And now what's the duration? How long do we want this to last? So we'll say 2 weeks. Now it's been created. And here all I'm doing is selecting my items from my backlog and adding them now to my sprint. Now, the goal is to get people to accomplish those tasks. We don't want to overload them, and now it's like the entire backlog has been added to the sprint, and they're sitting here like scratching their head like, what the hell is going on? So if I have maybe 3 or 4, depending on the intensity of the task and how heavy the project is, I can have multiple sprints, assign them to specific users, give them a time frame, and now they have 2 weeks to complete those items in that sprint. And it's really as simple as it sounds. If we go back to that previous slide, we took a section, we added a couple items to it, give them a time frame, complete. Once that section is done, we move on to the next. And this way, by doing little chunks, your customers are actually going to be a bit more satisfied because they can actually see what they're paying for. They're not just waiting impatiently for Amazon to deliver the box. They can actually see the progression of what's happening. And once you reach that stage now, when we're at the very end, I'm pretty sure if there were any mistakes or anything that they wanted you to fix, from the very first iteration or the second iteration, you would fix that problem and deliver on that project. Here we go. So I have my sprint. Once I have everything set up, I can go ahead and start it if I wanted to. I give everybody a time frame, so now they just need to go ahead and get to work. And then here, we have the sprint, right? We actually do that at Zoho. For all our meetings, if we're traveling, my boss will come up and say, okay, guys, this is what we need to get done. We're in that sprint, we have that time frame, get those PowerPoints, get those presentations. It doesn't matter if you didn't get it done on Sunday. On Monday, we need to see what you have. And it actually helps us keep everything in track because we're human. We're going to put something else for later. There's always going to be a variation. So by doing this, you give your employees or yourself a little bit of work, but by actually getting the first section done, your brain actually is getting rewarded because you're getting a satisfaction that you have something done. So that's a trigger. So there's a bit of psychology involved in it as well because now you've completed that first task or that first iteration. You did something as opposed to just sitting there and working and not seeing anything at all. That can discourage a lot of people. This is where we procrastinate. This is where we say, man, I give up, or I'll do it tomorrow, and then tomorrow becomes Thursday, and we never get to it. But while doing this process, we get something done. So let's see here. I am in development. Bam. And maybe this one is on hold. I'm not sure why, but it can be. So here you have that backlog with every single task that we needed. We created a sprint. We added a couple items to it. And now those items are being worked. We're going to have variations, bless you. Things happen. So here is where, while we're working on that sprint, we can access that. But for some companies, the need is a bit bigger. A sprint is great, depending on what we're doing. But depending on the load of your project, you might need an epic. And the name just says it. It's an epic sprint almost that you're doing. It's huge. So here I have a couple epics. And you can see I have my backlog items, my different sprints going on, because it's a very big project that you're really working on. And at that point, you create that epic, and you have all your items in there, and you can see them in here. I can still move things around if I need to, but the goal is not so different from the other one. It's just a size issue. So you'll notice here, I can see my epics, and I'm also seeing the percentage at which it's being completed. So sign up, it seems like they're actually doing a good job, and purchase tickets is doing very well, it seems. And then we go back to that dashboard. Again, I'm seeing what's happening within that sprint that I just created earlier. And if I have any other sprints that are going on, I can actually toggle in between them. And again, I'm actually accessing all those backlogs. We still have reports. You might notice that a lot of our apps have at least some level of reporting in there. Thanks to Zoho Analytics, we embed that in multiple applications. So now we also enable you to do the reporting. Earlier, I did mention that we, unfortunately, we don't have an integration of Zoho Sprints and Zoho CRM just yet. But some people who do use, let's say, Zoho Flow, or maybe if you do have Zoho One, this is, again, where we can use that cheat sheet to execute for us if we wanted to. This way, that person has access to it, where we integrate the two applications based on a particular stage of a deal or based on a record that's been created. Whatever the criteria that you choose, now you can use Flow to also help you with that. And, of course, we need to bill people, right? So here, we also have that timesheet section again. When people are working and they need to get that particular task or particular job done, this is where now we can actually access that information. And we actually put it in, and now people are being billed, and that's going through. And then, of course, we do have to do some meetings. That product owner, the team, the developers, everybody working in here, we need to be able to communicate with them. And like my previous presenter said, instead of actually having a boardroom where everybody's bored, now you can actually create your meeting, have everybody in there, and get their task completed. I work with Zoho, and half of my coworkers are in either Chennai or in another country. So we work in very different time zones. So it would be impossible to try to meet together. So this is where meetings, Zoho Meeting, and all those different tools come into play and help us with that, creating those in here. So I could have a general one, and I'll say created by me again. And who am I including in here? So let's put Emma and Fatima. And here we're going to put the date and time. So it will be a one-day thing. And we'll select the sprint that I created, which was test. So you'll notice like some of the key things, right? You have your backlogs, how many users are in the backlogs, what they're getting done. So I guess the key thing will determine based on the industry that you're in, the kind of work that you do. I will always suggest, hey, try it out to see if it works for you. And it might be a good thing to have because my key preference with sprints is that you now have iterations. You can't assign people just set amount of tasks. They're not too overloaded where they're working multiple projects. And you can actually keep a quick track of what's going on, losing that dashboard. Thank you.